Tears don't always fall in silence. Sometimes they fall in rooms filled with laughter. Angela never imagined that the worst moment of her life would happen on her birthday, surrounded by people dressed in red, holding a letter that would erase everything she thought she had built. The cake was still lit, glasses were still raised, and across the table, the man she married was smiling like this was a joke he couldn't wait to tell. Her hands shook as she read the words, divorce, final, immediate. "You're leaving me?" she whispered, her voice barely holding together. Marcus laughed, not nervously, not awkwardly. He laughed like a man who had already won. What Angela didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that this moment wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of a reckoning, because the same woman being mocked at that table was about to stand up again, step by painful step, and take back everything that was stolen from her. And when she did, the room wouldn't be laughing anymore. It would be silent. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. If the person you trusted most betrayed you at your weakest moment, would you fight back quietly? Or would you walk away and never look back? Tell me in the comments. And while you're listening, comment where you're watching from. I read every single one. Now, let me tell you how Angela's story really began. Everyone said Angela was lucky. She was beautiful, intelligent, successful. And on the day she married Marcus, the room overflowed with applause, champagne, and envy. People whispered about her dress, her smile, her future. They said she had it all. Angela believed them. She stood at the altar glowing, her hands steady, her heart full. For the first time in her life, love felt simple, safe. Marcus looked at her like she was the only person in the room, and when he said his vows, his voice cracked just enough to make them sound real. Angela thought she was marrying her partner. Marcus thought he had finally won. As the night went on, laughter grew louder. Glasses emptied, music played. Marcus drank more than anyone else in the room, his confidence swelling with every toast. Each time someone congratulated him, he smiled wider, too wide. Inside his head, the celebration meant something else. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt rich, not because he had earned it, but because he had married it. Angela came from generational wealth, businesses, trusts, investments built long before Marcus ever struggled to pay rent. He knew it. He had always known it. And now, standing beside her as husband and wife, Marcus felt untouchable. No more struggling, no more proving himself, no more working until his hands ached. His future was already paid for. Angela, meanwhile, watched Marcus laugh with her guests and felt proud. Proud that the man she loved was finally happy. Proud that she could share everything she had built with someone who loved her, for her. She didn't see the difference between their smiles. As the reception wound down, Marcus insisted on driving them home. Angela hesitated. He'd been drinking. She suggested calling a driver, maybe staying the night. Marcus laughed it off. "I'm fine," he said. "Relax. Tonight's perfect." Angela trusted him. The road was quiet. The city lights blurred past the windows. Marcus hummed to the music, one hand on the wheel, the other tapping to the rhythm. Angela leaned back in her seat, exhausted but happy, already imagining their life together. Then it happened. The crash came without warning. Metal screamed. Glass exploded. The world lurched sideways. The impact slammed directly into the passenger side. Angela never heard herself scream. When she opened her eyes, everything smelled like smoke and blood. Sirens wailed in the distance. Her body felt heavy, wrong. She tried to move. Nothing happened. At the hospital, chaos filled the corridors. Doctors rushed past. Nurses shouted instructions. Marcus sat upright on a gurney, shaken but conscious, his injuries reduced to bruises and shallow cuts. Angela was wheeled away. Hours later, a doctor stood at the foot of her bed, hands folded, voice careful. The words came slowly, deliberately. Angela, you won't be able to walk. Time stopped. The doctor continued, explaining procedures, recovery, timelines, but Angela only heard one sentence. Not for months, not temporarily, for 2 years. Her breath caught. Tears spilled down her face before she could stop them. Everything she had planned, her independence, her work, her freedom, collapsed in that moment. Marcus sat beside her and took her hand. "We'll get through this," he said softly. "I promise. I've got you." Angela believed him. She didn't know that as she lay there, broken, terrified, trusting, the man holding her hand was already stepping into a life built entirely on her sacrifice. And this was only the beginning. Angela didn't remember being moved. One moment, she was staring at the ceiling of the emergency room, lights blinding her eyes. The next, she was waking up in a hospital bed that didn't feel like her own. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. Machines hummed softly beside her. She tried to move her legs. Nothing happened. At first, she thought her body was just tired, shocked. She had been in an accident after all. Pain made everything feel slow, heavy. She told herself to wait. Seconds passed, then minutes. Still nothing. Panic crept in quietly, like a whisper she didn't want to hear. Angela pressed her palms into the mattress and tried again, focusing harder this time, silently begging her legs to respond. They didn't. Her heart began to race. A nurse noticed the change in her breathing and rushed over. "Angela, try to stay calm," she said gently, adjusting the monitors. "The doctor will be in soon." Angela nodded, but fear wrapped around her chest. She stared at her legs, covered by a thin white sheet, and wondered why they felt so far away. When the doctor finally arrived, he didn't smile. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, his movements careful, deliberate. That was when Angela knew something was wrong. Doctors didn't sit unless they had something heavy to say. "Angela," he began, "the impact from the crash caused severe trauma to your spine." She barely heard the rest at first. He explained how the passenger side absorbed most of the force, how the damage wasn't visible from the outside, how her injuries were serious, but not hopeless. Then he said the words that shattered her. "You won't be able to walk for 2 years." Angela stared at him, unblinking. 2 years didn't make sense. It was too long, too final. Her mind rejected it before her heart could catch up. I don't understand," she whispered. "I was fine yesterday." The doctor nodded slowly. "I know. And that's what makes this so hard." The room blurred as tears filled her eyes. 2 years meant losing control of everything she had built. Her work, her independence, her identity. It meant depending on someone else for things she had never needed help with before. Angela's hands trembled as she asked the question she was afraid to hear answered. "Will I ever be the same?" The doctor hesitated, just for a moment. "You'll recover," he said carefully, "but it will take time, a lot of time." After he left, the room felt unbearably quiet. Angela turned her head and saw Marcus standing near the window. He looked shaken, but not broken. Bruises marked his face, but he was standing, whole, intact. He walked over and took her hand. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I never should have driven." Angela wanted to be angry. She wanted to scream, but fear swallowed everything else. She squeezed his hand instead. "I'm scared," she admitted. Marcus softened. His voice dropped, warm and reassuring. "You don't have to worry about anything," he said. "I'll take care of everything. Your businesses, your meetings, your money, all of it." Angela hesitated. Her entire life had been built on independence, on control, on knowing exactly where things stood. But now, lying there unable to move, the thought of managing anything felt impossible. Marcus leaned closer. "You trust me, right?" Angela looked at the man she had just married, the man who had promised to love her, the man who was standing while she was broken. She nodded. Yes, she said softly. I trust you. Marcus smiled and kissed her forehead. Then rest. I've got this. Angela closed her eyes, believing she was safe. She didn't see the flicker in Marcus's expression when she agreed. The relief, the opportunity. As the machines continued their steady beeping, Angela drifted into uneasy sleep, unaware that while she had lost the ability to walk, Marcus had just gained control over her entire world, and he had no intention of giving it back. Recovery didn't begin with strength, it began with helplessness. Angela woke each morning to the same ceiling, the same dull ache in her spine, the same quiet fear that her body might never feel like hers again. Nurses came and went. Physical therapists offered encouragement she wasn't ready to believe. And Marcus was always there. At least that's how it looked. He arrived every morning with coffee she couldn't drink and updates she couldn't verify. He spoke gently, patiently, like a man carrying more than his share of the weight. Your board meeting went great, he would say, setting his phone on the table. They're confident in the direction. Everyone says to focus on healing. At first, Angela felt grateful. She signed documents Marcus brought her, gave verbal approvals, shared passwords. It felt temporary, necessary. She told herself this was what marriage was, leaning on each other when things got hard. Marcus never rushed her. He never demanded control outright. He suggested, "Why don't I attend the meetings for now? It's easier if everything runs through me. You need rest, not stress." Angela nodded. Every time. She didn't notice how quickly her name stopped appearing on emails, how calls were redirected, how decisions were made before she even knew there was a choice. Marcus became her voice in rooms she could no longer enter, and people listened. They saw a devoted husband stepping up for his injured wife, a man handling responsibility with grace. They praised him for it, congratulated him, told him how lucky Angela was to have someone like him. Marcus absorbed it all. At home, he began staying out later. Meetings, he said, business dinners, networking. Angela never questioned it. She was exhausted most nights, her body drained from therapy, her mind foggy from pain medication. But sometimes, late at night, she would lie, awake, and listen. Listen for his keys. Listen for his footsteps. Listen for reassurance that she hadn't been forgotten. When Marcus did come home, he was distracted. His phone never left his hand. He smiled at messages he didn't explain. When Angela asked questions, he answered vaguely. "Just work," he'd say. "You know how it is." Angela tried to ignore the knot in her chest. Weeks passed, then months. Marcus took over more than meetings. He managed accounts, consolidated finances, suggested moving things for convenience. Angela trusted him, because trusting him was easier than confronting the fear that something was wrong. She didn't see the withdrawals, didn't see the transfers, didn't see the patterns forming beneath the surface. Marcus, however, saw everything. He learned how her wealth moved, where it came from, where it went, which accounts were monitored and which weren't, which safeguards depended on her signature and which didn't. He memorized her world. And then, one evening, he reconnected with someone from his past, a woman who once laughed at his ambition, a woman who walked away when he had nothing. She didn't laugh now. She admired his suit, his confidence, the way he paid for dinner without hesitation. Marcus told her he was married. He told her his wife was injured. He told her he was handling everything. The woman smiled. They started meeting again, quietly at first. Drinks turned into weekends. Marcus spent Angela's money like it was proof of his success, proof that he had finally become the man everyone once doubted. At home, Angela noticed changes she couldn't explain. Bills she didn't recognize. Accounts she didn't remember opening. A distance in Marcus's eyes that felt permanent. When she asked him about it, he sighed. "Do you really want to deal with this right now?" he asked. "You should focus on getting better." Angela fell silent. She hated that she couldn't stand up, hated that she couldn't walk away, hated that she needed him. Marcus watched her retreat and felt something shift inside him. Not guilt, impatience. He was tired of pretending, tired of caring, tired of being tied to a woman who reminded him that everything he had wasn't really his. And as Angela struggled to learn how to sit up without pain, Marcus was already planning the day he would leave her behind. Marcus didn't feel guilty. That was the first thing that surprised him. When he started seeing her again, the woman who once walked away because he had nothing, he expected shame to creep in. Maybe fear, maybe hesitation. None of it came. Instead, he felt justified. In his mind, Angela's injury had changed everything. Their marriage wasn't what he signed up for anymore. The life he imagined, freedom, luxury, admiration, felt delayed. And Marcus hated waiting. The woman from his past didn't wait. She listened when he complained. She laughed when he joked about stress. She admired the way he ordered expensive wine without checking the price. She didn't see a caretaker or a husband tied down. She saw a man with access. They met in places Angela could never go. Restaurants with stairs, rooftop lounges, weekend trips Marcus called business travel. Each time Marcus paid with money that wasn't his and felt no hesitation doing it. He told himself he deserved it. Angela, meanwhile, felt something slipping, but couldn't name it. Her days were filled with physical therapy and silence. Her nights stretched long and lonely. Marcus was home less. When he was there, he was distant. His smile didn't reach his eyes anymore. She tried to talk to him. "You seem different," she said one evening, her voice careful. "Did I do something wrong?" Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then turned away. "Don't start," he said. "I'm doing everything I can." Angela swallowed her words. She began noticing small things. Receipts she didn't recognize, charges that didn't match his explanations, a perfume scent that wasn't hers clinging to his jacket. But every time she questioned him, Marcus flipped the script. "You're overthinking. You're stressed. This is why I didn't want you worrying about finances." Angela hated herself for doubting him. She hated herself even more for needing him. As Marcus's double life grew more comfortable, his patience wore thin. The woman from his past started asking questions about the money, the marriage, the future. Marcus didn't hesitate. He told her Angela would never know. He told her everything was under control. He told her it was only a matter of time. And slowly, that idea began to harden into a plan. Angela's birthday was approaching, a milestone, a moment people would expect celebration, gratitude, smiles. Marcus saw something else, an ending. At home, Angela tried to find joy in small things. She practiced standing longer each day, pushing through pain, determined not to disappear into her condition. She planned a dinner, not extravagant, just elegant, a reminder that she was still here. Marcus watched her plan it with detached amusement. He already knew how the night would end. The evening of the birthday arrived. Angela wore red, bold, hopeful, alive. She wanted to feel beautiful again, wanted to feel chosen. The dining room filled with guests. Laughter echoed. Glasses clinked. People admired the setup, the cake, the effort she had put into the night. Marcus smiled and played his role perfectly. He waited. And when the moment was right, when everyone was seated, when attention was divided just enough, he reached into his jacket. Angela noticed the movement and smiled, thinking it was a gift. He placed the envelope on the table instead. The room continued laughing. Angela opened it. And everything stopped making sense. As she read the words, the weight of the betrayal finally settled in her chest. She looked up at Marcus, confusion flooding her face. "Marcus?" she whispered. He leaned back in his chair and laughed, loud enough for everyone to hear. Angela didn't know it yet, but this was the moment Marcus would regret for the rest of his life. Because humiliation can break a person, or it can wake them up. And Angela was done sleeping. For a moment, Angela thought she had misunderstood. The laughter around the table continued, soft and careless, as if nothing had changed. The candle flames danced. Someone lifted a glass. The room was still celebrating, except her world had just stopped. She read the first line again. Divorce. Her hands began to shake. Marcus, her voice cracked as she looked up at him. Is this a joke? Marcus didn't answer right away. He leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed, and took a sip of his drink. Then he laughed, sharp and cruel, and pointed at her. Of course it's not a joke, he said. I'm done pretending. The laughter around the table slowed, confusion spreading across faces. Angela felt heat rush to her cheeks as every eye turned toward her. You're leaving me? She whispered. On my birthday? Marcus shrugged. Why not? I'm tired of acting like this is something it's not. Angela's chest tightened. I thought you loved me. Marcus smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. I could manage pretending, he said casually, if it was just a marriage, but a marriage to a black woman with a disability. He shook his head. That's not the life I signed up for. The room went still. Then someone laughed, nervously at first, then louder. Others followed. Some guests avoided eye contact. Others stared, frozen. No one stopped him. Angela felt the sound press in on her from every direction. The humiliation burned worse than any physical pain she had ever known. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You promised me, she said, barely audible. You said you'd take care of me. Marcus leaned forward, lowering his voice just enough to sound intimate. I did take care of you, he said. I handled everything. Angela didn't understand what he meant until he slid another folder across the table. Account statements, transfer records, documents she had never seen, her inheritance. Gone. The air left her lungs. You took it? She whispered. Marcus nodded, unbothered. It's already done. Everything's legal. You signed what I needed. Angela's vision blurred. She searched the room for help, for outrage, for someone, anyone, to stand up for her. No one did. Some guests looked uncomfortable. Others whispered. A few continued drinking, eager to avoid being involved. The woman seated beside Marcus watched with thinly disguised satisfaction. Angela's body shook as sobs escaped her chest. She felt small, exposed, powerless. This was how he had chosen to end it, publicly, cruelly, completely. Marcus stood and straightened his jacket. I'll have my lawyer handle the rest, he said. You should focus on recovery. Then he walked away, leaving behind the cake, the papers, and the woman he had stripped of everything. Angela sat there long after the guests began to leave. The candles burned out one by one. That night, alone in her room, Angela cried until her body ached. She cried for the marriage she thought she had, for the future she lost, for the strength she no longer felt she had. But somewhere beneath the grief, something else began to form. Anger, not loud, not explosive, focused. Because Marcus had made one mistake. He thought taking her money meant taking her power. He thought her inability to walk meant she couldn't stand up for herself. He was wrong. And as Angela wiped her tears and stared at the ceiling, one thought cut through the pain with clarity. If she couldn't walk her way back to justice, she would crawl if she had to. The silence after betrayal was louder than the laughter that came before it. Angela spent days staring at the same four walls, replaying every moment of that night. The candles, the paper in her hands, Marcus's voice, cold, casual, final. Sleep came in short, broken pieces, When she woke, the reality returned just as sharp. She had lost her marriage, her inheritance, her sense of safety, and she was still unable to walk. At first, the pain felt unbearable, not just in her body, but in her chest. The kind of pain that makes breathing feel optional. She cried quietly so the nurses wouldn't hear. She didn't want sympathy anymore. What she wanted was answers. She started reviewing what little she still had access to. Old emails, notes she'd saved, statements from before Marcus took over. The gaps were obvious now, patterns she hadn't seen before because she trusted him too much to look. Angela realized something terrifying. Marcus hadn't just stolen from her. He had planned it. The realization broke her heart. All over again. But this time, something else followed. Clarity. She couldn't undo the past. She couldn't confront him, not yet. And she couldn't rely on anyone who had laughed while she was humiliated. So she did the only thing left. She turned inward. Angela stopped waiting for her body to recover on its own. She stopped accepting vague reassurances from doctors who spoke in timelines, but never in possibilities. She began searching, quietly, obsessively, for another way. Late at night, when the pain medication wore off and sleep refused to come, she scrolled through forums, medical journals, and testimonials, stories of people who refused to accept the first answer they were given. That's when she found him. A specialist, known for impossible cases, known for surgeries most patients were warned against. The consultation was brief but honest. "You can walk again," he told her. "Not perfectly, not easily, but sooner than they told you." Angela's heart raced. "How soon?" 3 months, he said, "if you're willing to endure the pain." She didn't hesitate. The cost was high, higher than she could afford, unless she was careful. Marcus believed he had taken everything. He hadn't. Angela had always been cautious, always kept a small portion of her finances separate, untouched, unnoticed. Money meant for emergencies she never imagined would come. She used it without regret. The surgery was brutal. Pain unlike anything she had known tore through her body as she relearned the simplest movements. Every session left her shaking. Every night ended in exhaustion and tears. But something changed. Pain stopped feeling like punishment. It became proof. Each day, Angela pushed herself further than the last. She clenched her teeth through agony, gripping the bars, forcing her legs to respond. Progress came slowly, but it came. Weeks passed, then months. One morning, Angela stood without assistance. It wasn't graceful. Her legs trembled. Sweat soaked her back. But she stood. And for the first time since the accident, she smiled. Not because she had healed, but because she had remembered who she was. Angela wasn't rebuilding her body just to walk again. She was preparing to confront the man who believed she was finished. And when she did, she wouldn't come back asking for mercy. She would come back with proof. The pain didn't lessen. That was the lie Angela had believed at first, that one day she would wake up and it wouldn't hurt as much. That healing would feel gentle, forgiving. It didn't. Every morning began the same way. Breath held, jaw clenched, hands gripping the edge of the bed as she forced her legs to respond. Some days they did. Other days they didn't. On the worst days, the pain was so sharp it stole her voice. But Angela didn't stop. She learned the difference between discomfort and damage. Learned how far she could push before her body screamed back. Learned that pain, when chosen, felt different than pain forced on you. This pain had a purpose. Physical therapy became her battlefield. Sweat soaked through her clothes. Her muscles shook violently as she stood, sat, stood again. When she fell, she got back up, slowly, painfully, stubbornly. No one cheered. No one filmed it. No one knew. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Outside those walls, Marcus was enjoying what he believed was his victory. He posted pictures from places Angela had once dreamed of visiting together. Expensive restaurants, weekend getaways, smiling beside the woman from his past who now wore confidence like it belonged to her. Angela saw none of it. She had stopped looking. Her focus narrowed to two things only: recovery and truth. Between therapy sessions, Angela worked quietly. She contacted professionals Marcus didn't know existed, asked questions carefully, never rushed. Every call was deliberate. She reconstructed her finances piece by piece: old signatures, timestamps, approval chains, subtle inconsistencies. Marcus had assumed no one would notice. He had been thorough, but he had also been arrogant. He believed she was too broken to look. Angela saved everything. There were nights when doubt crept in, when exhaustion pressed so heavily on her chest she wondered if this was worth it, when fear whispered that Marcus was untouchable now, that she would only hurt herself trying. On those nights, Angela remembered the birthday, the laughter, the pointing finger, the way the room turned away from her. And she kept going. 3 months passed like this, slow, brutal, unforgiving. Then came the day her doctor asked her to try walking without assistance. Angela stood at the bars, her heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. She released her grip slowly, carefully, as if her body might betray her at any second. Her legs trembled. She took one step, then another. Each movement felt like fire, but she stayed upright. When she reached the end of the room, tears streamed down her face. Not from pain, from victory. She wasn't whole. She wasn't fast, but she was mobile, and that was enough. Angela didn't rush to confront Marcus. That would have been satisfying, but foolish. Instead, she waited. She allowed him to believe she was still struggling, still dependent, still unaware. She let him grow careless, let him talk too freely, spend too confidently. Marcus thought the story was over. He thought she had accepted her loss. He was wrong, because while he was busy enjoying what he stole, Angela was preparing something far more dangerous than anger. She was preparing evidence, and soon she wouldn't need to walk into a room loudly. She would walk in quietly, and when she spoke, no one would laugh. Marcus believed the danger had passed. From his perspective, the story was finished. Angela was injured, isolated, and quiet. The divorce was underway. The money was already moved. And the people around him, friends, business partners, even his ex, treated him like a man who had finally arrived. He mistook silence for surrender. Angela, meanwhile, worked in the margins. She didn't start with confrontation. She started with patterns. Late at night, when her body finally rested enough to let her think clearly, Angela laid everything out in her mind. Dates, transfers, meetings. Marcus claimed to attend. Decisions she didn't remember making. Nothing emotional, only facts. And facts, she knew, never lied. She began with what Marcus assumed she could never access again. Old records stored in places he never bothered to check. Archived emails, offline backups. Paperwork she had insisted on keeping long before marriage had softened her instincts. The first inconsistency appeared small. A signature that looked like hers, but wasn't. A timestamp that didn't match her location. An approval issued on a day she was sedated. Individually, they meant nothing. Together, they formed a shape. Angela reached out quietly. To accountants she had worked with years earlier. To legal consultants recommended by people who didn't know Marcus existed. She asked questions carefully, never revealing too much at once. What would this mean? Is this normal? Have you seen this before? The answers came slowly, and when they did, they were devastating. Marcus hadn't just exploited her trust. He had exploited her condition. He had moved money while she was legally incapacitated, redirected assets through accounts that relied on her digital consent she physically could not have given. He assumed no one would ever check. Angela documented everything, She learned where Marcus had grown careless, using the same accounts repeatedly, assuming no one was watching. She learned how arrogance had replaced caution, how confidence had made him sloppy. He never imagined Angela would regain enough strength to fight. She didn't rush. That was the part Marcus would never understand. Angela waited. Let him spend. Let him relax. Let him believe the money was his. The more he moved, the clearer the trail became. And then, by accident, Marcus made his worst mistake. He bragged. At a private dinner, he laughed about handling the divorce, about how easy it was when someone trusted you completely, about how Angela wouldn't even know what was missing. Someone at that table listened quietly, someone who knew Angela. The call came 2 days later. Angela didn't cry when she hung up. She didn't panic. She simply added one more piece to the puzzle. Now she had proof, not just financial, personal. At the same time, Marcus's relationship with his ex began to shift. Money had drawn her back, but power changed him. He grew careless, demanding, entitled. He started watching expenses closely, not because he was responsible, but because he sensed something tightening around him. He didn't know what, only that something felt off. Angela scheduled one final consultation, not to ask if she could walk further, but to ask if she was ready. Physically? The doctor asked. Angela stood, slowly, steadily, without help. Yes, she said. The meeting was set. Neutral ground, legal presence, witnesses. Marcus thought it was a formality. He arrived relaxed, confident, already planning where he'd go afterward. He barely looked at Angela when she entered the room, walking on her own. The shift was subtle, a flicker in his eyes, but he recovered quickly, smirking as he took his seat. Angela didn't speak immediately. She placed a folder on the table, then another, then another. Marcus's smile tightened. "What's this?" he asked. Angela met his gaze calmly. No anger, no tears. "Your mistake," she said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She simply opened the first folder and slid it toward him. Account records, time stamps, expert annotations. Marcus glanced down, then looked up and laughed. "You don't understand how this works." Angela opened the second folder. Medical records, proof of incapacity, dates he had signed on her behalf. The laughter died. She opened the third folder. Witness statements, messages, a timeline so clear it felt inevitable. The room shifted. Marcus's face drained of color. His confidence evaporated, replaced by something close to panic. He looked around, searching for an escape that no longer existed. Angela finally spoke again. "You thought I was too broken to notice," she said quietly. "You thought taking my money meant taking my power." She leaned forward, steady, unshaking. "You were wrong." For the first time since the accident, Marcus had nothing to say. The silence stretched, heavy, unforgiving, and in that silence, Marcus understood the truth he had avoided for months. The woman he humiliated, the woman he abandoned, the woman he believed was finished, had been walking toward him the entire time. No one spoke. The room felt heavier with every passing second, as if the truth itself had weight. Marcus stared at the documents in front of him, his mouth opening once, then closing again. For the first time since Angela had met him, he had no performance ready. The people who had once admired him now watched carefully, differently. They weren't laughing anymore. They weren't impressed. They were calculating, wondering how they had missed it. Angela sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She didn't need to say more. The evidence spoke for her. The lawyers exchanged looks. One of them cleared his throat and began explaining what Marcus already knew, what he had always known, but assumed would never matter. The transfers were unauthorized. The timing was damning. The signatures were invalid. Marcus tried to interrupt. "There's been a misunderstanding," he said, his voice strained. "She trusted me. I was acting in her best interest." Angela finally looked at him. "I trusted you," she said calmly. "That's why this hurts." Her voice didn't shake. The room shifted again. Marcus's ex, seated a few chairs away, crossed her arms and avoided his gaze. She had stopped smiling. The confidence she once wore so proudly had vanished. She had come for the money, not the fallout. The ruling came quickly. The accounts would be frozen. The assets returned. An investigation opened. Marcus didn't argue this time. He stood slowly as if gravity itself had changed and walked out without looking back. The man who once laughed at Angela's pain now couldn't meet her eyes. In the weeks that followed, everything unraveled. The money disappeared, not from Angela's life, but from Marcus's. Legal fees mounted, deals collapsed. Friends distanced themselves. And the woman who returned when he was rich left again, this time taking what little he thought he had managed to hide. Marcus ended up exactly where he started. Alone, broke, exposed. Angela, on the other hand, moved forward, literally and figuratively. She didn't rush. She didn't boast. She focused on healing, on rebuilding what had been disrupted, not destroyed. Her steps were still careful. Her body still carried reminders of what she had endured. But she stood. And that was everything. On the anniversary of the night Marcus handed her the divorce papers, Angela returned to the same kind of room. But this time she walked in on her own. No spotlight, no drama, just quiet strength. She didn't need applause. She had justice. And as she left, the silence followed her. Not the silence of humiliation, but the silence of respect. Because sometimes the strongest revenge isn't destruction. It's survival. It's standing back up when someone was certain you never would. Do you think Angela's greatest victory was getting her inheritance back? Or proving she was never as powerless as Marcus believed? Drop your thoughts in the comments.